Thank you. And I'm very happy to play the newbie card. I think we'll play the newbie card until Christmas. I think that's what we're saying. Today, I think, I just googled it, there are 10 weeks and 2 days in post today, so I'm going to play the newbie card, but it has been a fantastic 10 weeks. And what I've tried to do as much as possible is to get out and speak to as many children and young people, parents, carers, professionals as possible. So it's been like I felt like a Tasmanian devil at times, you know, just spinning around, but it's been a fantastic experience. And I thank you for your kind words. And yeah, I started my career in 1996 in the Star Neighbourhood Centre, so I think I'll start there, and that's where I feel that I developed a passion for community development, youth work, social justice, and learnt. I think the 4 years that I spent there, I learned a great deal about the lives of children and young people and how to affect change at that community level. And at that time, looking back, it was just pre-Good Friday Agreement. I was working on interfaces in North Belfast, and yeah, a lot has changed, but I think I'll reflect on this in what I say in a few moments. There's a lot of issues 25 years on from the Good Friday Agreement that we're still grappling with, that I think we need to call out actually, and I'm glad that the Young Life and Time survey does that. So I want to start by congratulating Dirk and ARK for 20 years, and fun fact, Nikki and the Young Life and Time survey share the same birthday, so we're both 20 years old. I don't know what it would 20, but we're both 20 years old this year, and it's I suppose it's a wee bit ironic, but very important in the context of Article 12 and the voices of children and young people. My role as Commissioner for Children and Young People is to safeguard and promote the rights of children and young people, and I'm really blessed to have duties and powers that go with that. And I feel that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is a really important part of my work, and I often refer to it as it's been referred to as a human rights instrument, and I'm trying to use that instrument as best that I can to affect change. And what I've seen in the Young Life and Time survey, there's a direct correlation between the concluding OBS and the work that I intend doing over the next 4 and hopefully 8 years in driving forward some of that change. In terms of the voices of children and young people, Article 12 I've mentioned, and within Nikki we have a youth panel which helps steer me in my work, and I did say that I try to speak to children and young people as much as possible, and hopefully that's something that I can bring. I spent 15 years in the youth forum, and a big part of that 15 years was trying to bang doors and open doors and get people to listen, and I'll continue to do that from another angle in the role that I'm in now. So I do feel very honoured to be in this role, and I'm a strong believer in the link between rights, research and social justice, and that's something that I've tried to do throughout my career, and what that means is, I suppose, listening to children's voices, backing that up with research. I think research is so important, so when I'm in rooms, and when we're all in rooms lobbying to affect change, to be able to refer back to research is a powerful tool in trying to affect that change. So I often talk about the link between rights, research and achieving social justice. I said earlier that we're both 20 this year, and there has been a long-standing relationship between Nikki and the Young Life and Time survey, and over the years we have commissioned questions. So looking back in 2010, we've done some work around awareness around what children and young people and their parents and carers knew about Nikki and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. I still think that's a pertinent question that we need to be asking. Knowledge of rights and knowledge of my role, and the fact that children and young people have someone whose job is set in policy to fight for their rights, is something that I want to work more on around our visibility and our accessibility. In 2012 we've done some work with the survey around shared education, and then looking through 2014 we've done more work around the UN Convention, and in 2020 we've done some work with regards to young people's young people's views with regards to COVID-19, which fed into Nikki's New and Better Normal report. And COVID is one of them. At the minute I'm doing a bit of business planning. I love a good strategy. Like, I'm not just for the sake of having a strategy, but at the minute I'm doing my listening, but I'm also engaging with my team in Nikki to look at our priorities for the next 4 years, and I'm devising a corporate plan, and I would encourage you, if you have time, to feed into that. Unfortunately, the deadline for consultation is, I think it's the 6th of January. So if you find yourself over Christmas bored and fed up with turkey and stuffing, just click on the Nikki website and give us a wee read and feedback. I'd be really willing to hear your views. But the COVID thing is big. You know, when I'm out and about speaking to people, I still am fearful that we don't know the long-term impact of COVID. When I think about children in their early years, even with language development and social development, those children, those babies, that through 2 years of their lives were in a very different world than what we were used to growing up in, and then looking at children and young people in various transitions in their lives, the transition between post-primary and primary, you know, that was difficult for children who were locked away during that phase. But this issue spans, like, any child, young people, professional, anyone working in the sector. I think we're still scratching our heads, and I think we need to make a bit of noise actually about the long-term impact and act on that. You know, I think we need to wrap services around children and young people to try and recover some of what we've lost during the lockdown and what we're dealing with now. I mean, there's many children who haven't returned to school. EA are talking loads about school absence, but I don't believe that we're talking about the why. We need to find out why children and young people aren't going to school. We need to find out if their needs are being met. We need to listen to their parents, and we need to listen about homeschooling and why some parents are opting for homeschooling. So these are all issues that I'm grappling with. I talked earlier about my listening exercise and my priorities, and how Young Life and Times is a big part of that, and how I want to keep listening. And I feel strongly, I feel quite cross actually about the current state of play. We've no government. We're hearing every day, we heard this week that Jeffrey Donaldson and colleagues are pushing back a little bit on the timing issue, and I've talked to the Secretary of State, I've talked to each of the permanent secretaries in government, I've talked to all the political parties, and my message is clear. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. Children and young people's rights are being negatively impacted, and the longer this goes on, the longer the children that we're working to serve get harmed. And today, teachers are out, and I'm not bashing teachers for being out at all. I think the bigger issue is that the way this place is funded isn't fit for purpose, and I'm fed up. Like, what if we get a government back together this week? The funding situation next year is still going to be dire, unfortunately. I don't want to be Mr. Negative here, but I do think we need to call these things out, and each of us have a role, and I have a particular role in that. And what I'll do is to keep pressing those issues. And as I said, I did have a meeting with the Secretary of State recently, and I wouldn't disclose what happened behind closed doors, but I did speak to him very directly and frankly about my feelings as Commissioner as to what's going on here right now. And I am a big advocate for the voluntary sector and the role it plays in serving children and young people. And as I said earlier, I came through the voluntary sector, but I think there is a big onus on partnership working between voluntary, public and private. And I think we need to further those conversations. We need the private sector to be investing more, not to let public sector off the hook, but there's a big responsibility on us all. Children and young people are the biggest users of public services, and children and young people, in my opinion, their voices aren't heard, their voices are overlooked, as you've said for 20 years in your letters. Children and young people's voices are just, sometimes it's quite tokenistic actually, and this consultation fatigue cycle that we're in can be frustrating too. Some of the issues, I just wanted to come back to some of the issues that I picked out in terms of the summary report, and things that I'm encouraged that are in there include the age of criminal responsibility. The fact that we criminalise our children from the age of 10 is just, it's deplorable, and that's out of sync with young people not having the right to vote, not having a say, all of these things. But I think we need to look at the justice system, the youth justice system in particular, and I would argue that we probably need a youth justice bill, because there's so many issues within that in terms of young people on policing, stop and search, spitting bike guards, the use of tasers, and the age of criminal responsibility that all need addressed. I've highlighted paramilitaries as something that I wanted to talk very briefly about, and the perceptions of paramilitarism was highlighted within the Young Life and Times report. And as I said earlier, I've been out and about roads, and I've been, I wouldn't say, unfortunately I'm not surprised. Unfortunately I'm not surprised that children and young people are still talking about the impact of paramilitaries. I was in schools and youth settings in North Belfast about 3-4 weeks ago, and I was told about paramilitaries recruiting young people from the age of 12. I was told about 7 and 8-year-olds knowing to go to the local park, and basically in their language they were explaining, they were talking about drug debt and paramilitary lending. 7 and 8-year-olds, I mean, that's just shocking. So I think we need to call out criminal exploitation, we need to call out criminal gangs, we need to call out child sexual exploitation, and these things, like, they're issues that are bubbling under that I don't think get the attention that they need, and it's really shocking and it makes me really angry, and I'm prepared to do what I can to call these things out. But in my role, I'm looking at the experts in this room, and I'm looking at you, and I really want to keep listening and keep learning, because I'm not an expert by any stretch. I see the experts in the sector in this room, and what I want to do is listen to your views and your voices and the voices of the children and young people that we serve, and to use my duties and powers as best we can. Other things that stood out to me were things like refugees and attitudes towards people who are coming here from different countries to seek asylum. There's things in the news about hotels getting emptied and no recourse on public funds, and to be quite frank, I don't really care about all those words. I care that there's children and young people that live here whose rights are getting impacted. If we're putting vulnerable families in hotels, the child's right to play, the child's right to socialise, the child's right to education, all these things are being impacted, and I want to speak and work on issues such as that. I could go on for ages, and I'm quite conscious of time, but other things that stood out were exam stress. We are in a period now of exams, and I feel strongly about the education system. I think we need to change the culture of how we do education. We need to stop measuring children on 5 GCSEs. The success of a young person is not based on 5 GCSEs. That's how our education system talks. And I'm looking forward to the publication of the independent review of education, which comes out next week. I'm keeping an open mind, but I would be fearful that it may not go far enough, and I think we need to get away from this language of describing children as learners and describing our education system as something that is a vehicle for economic growth. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child does not talk about GCSEs or economic growth. It talks about education in a holistic sense. And I think we need to start, what are the needs of a child? The very basic needs are feeling loved and secure in an environment where they can grow and develop. I think we need to strip it all back. So look, I'm gonna skip, because I think I have probably talked for a little bit too long, but before I finish, Article 12, Dirk, you said all too often the voices of children and young people are ignored. I would agree with that. I feel passionately that public bodies need to do more. They need to build the voices of children and young people into how they do their work on a day-to-day basis. I argue strongly for the use of child rights impact assessments, and I have challenged all of the government departments on the use of equality impact assessments and how they have set their budgets for this year, and I'll be writing to them again this week to ask them how they're going to do that for next year, because I would argue that this year's budgets did not consider age within the equality impact assessment process. So, all of that said, as I said, I'm going to cut myself short, because I do feel that I've probably went off on tangents and spoke for a bit too long, but I am really passionate about this. I'm delighted to be here today. I'll have to nip away probably halfway through the day, but I'm really interested in listening to the speakers. And please make yourselves, I want to be accessible, I want to listen as much as possible. And just congratulations, 20 years, and hopefully 20 years more. So thank you for having me, thank you for listening, and I'm all ears now, so cheers, thank you.